The return journey to Tarek's workshop was a race against time. Every few minutes, he glanced at his rearview scanner, watching the dust clouds of military vehicles grow larger on the horizon. Flux lay curled in the passenger compartment, eyes half closed, the strange mechanical components in his body occasionally pulsing with weak blue light. "Hang in there," Tarek murmured, pushing the hover transport to its limits. The old vehicle groaned in protest as they skimmed over rocky terrain, taking a circuitous route through narrow canyons to avoid detection. When they finally reached the outskirts of Nova Haven, Tarek bypassed the main settlement entirely. His workshop sat isolated on the eastern ridge, a converted mining outpost that offered both privacy and a spectacular view of Viridia's twin moons. Tonight, however, he appreciated only its seclusion as he guided the transport into the camouflaged garage bay. Inside his workshop, Tarek cleared a space on his workbench, carefully transferring Flux onto a thermal blanket. Under proper lighting, the dragon's condition looked even worse. The crystalline structures on his wing tips were cracked, and what Tarek had initially thought was discoloration on the scales was actually a network of fine fractures. "What did they do to you?" he whispered, reaching for his diagnostic scanner. Flux's eyes suddenly snapped open, glowing with unexpected intensity. Before Tarek could react, the dragon let out a distressed electronic whine, and every power source in the workshop surged simultaneously. Tools sparked, lights flared blindingly bright, and Tarek's scanner shattered in his hand. "Whoa!" Tarek stumbled backward as darkness fell over the workshop, emergency lights casting everything in a dull red glow. "Easy. Easy there." Flux had pressed himself against the wall, wings partially extended despite the obvious pain it caused him. His chest heaved with rapid breaths, and the mechanical core beneath his scales pulsed erratically. Tarek forced himself to remain still, hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly. "But I need to help you. You're injured." The dragon's golden eyes narrowed, assessing him with an intelligence that sent a chill down Tarek's spine. This was no simple animal, the genetic engineers at the research facility had created something far more complex. Minutes passed in tense silence before Flux slowly relaxed his defensive posture, lowering himself back onto the blanket. The pain of movement seemed to overcome his fear, and a soft whimper escaped him. "That's it," Tarek encouraged, cautiously approaching again. "Let me see what I can do." Without his scanner, Tarek had to rely on his own experience with both mechanical and biological systems. He gathered medical supplies alongside his toolkit, working methodically to clean the wounds on Flux's body. The dragon watched his every move but remained still, occasionally issuing small chirps that seemed to modulate in pitch depending on Tarek's actions. "You're communicating, aren't you?" Tarek realized aloud. "Not just making sounds. You're trying to talk to me." Flux blinked slowly in what Tarek interpreted as confirmation. As Tarek worked on splinting the damaged wing, he spoke continuously, explaining each step of the process. "I was head of security at that facility, you know. Before everything went wrong. Project Draconis was classified even from me. All I knew was that they were working on biological quantum interfaces. Using genetic material from the dragon fossils found in the deep caves." Flux's ears perked up at this, his attention clearly focused on Tarek's words. "There was an accident. Or at least that's what General Mercer called it." Tarek's voice hardened. "A containment breach that killed 27 researchers. I was tasked with the cleanup operation, but when I started asking questions about what exactly we were cleaning up." He gestured to a faded scar running along his jawline. "Let's just say the general doesn't appreciate curiosity in his subordinates." As the night wore on, Tarek applied a regenerative compound to Flux's fractured scales and carefully repaired what he could of the mechanical components. The dragon's condition stabilized gradually, his breathing becoming more regular and the pulsing core in his chest settling into a steady rhythm. "You need rest now," Tarek said, arranging additional blankets around the creature. "And I need to set up some security measures. I have a feeling we'll have company soon." As if confirming his suspicions, Tarek's perimeter alert system gave a soft beep. He moved quickly to the surveillance console, watching as a military scout vehicle slowly patrolled the road leading toward Nova Haven. They were searching methodically, house by house, workshop by workshop. General Mercer doesn't waste time, Tarek muttered. He returned to find Flux attempting to stand, wobbling unsteadily on the workbench. Hey, you need to rest, Tarek urged, but stopped short when he saw what was happening. The dragon was focusing intently on Tarek's broken scanner, and the mechanical components along his spine were glowing with increasing brightness. Tiny arcs of energy danced between Flux's crystalline wing tips and the shattered device. Before Tarek's astonished eyes, the scanner reassembled itself, components sliding back together as if guided by invisible hands. Within moments, it powered on, completely restored. You can manipulate energy fields, Tarek breathed in amazement. That's what they were trying to create, a biological quantum manipulator. Flux turned to face him, and for the first time, a sound emerged that wasn't a chirp or whine but something more structured, almost like words, though in no language Tarek recognized. The dragon took an unsteady step toward him, then another, determination evident in every movement. When Flux reached him, the dragon extended his uninjured wing, the tip gently touching Tarek's temple. A sensation like static electricity raced through Tarek's mind, and suddenly he was seeing fragments of memories, sterile laboratories, pain, researchers in protective suits, and always General Mercer watching from behind glass. Then something else, a sense of gratitude, of trust cautiously offered. When the connection broke, Tarek found himself sitting on the floor, breathing heavily. Flux had returned to the blankets, exhausted by the effort but watching Tarek with newfound clarity. "You're welcome," Tarek said simply, understanding without words. Outside, the military vehicle's searchlight swept across the landscape, inching closer to his hidden workshop. Tarek knew they couldn't stay here much longer. Flux represented something invaluable to the military, a weapon, a tool, a breakthrough. They would never stop hunting him. "We need to find somewhere safe," Tarek told his new companion. "And I think I know just the place." The Outcast's discovery. The distant world of Viridia wasn't much to look at these days. Once the pride of the Interstellar Commonwealth's terraforming program, it now existed as little more than a forgotten frontier outpost where the stars seemed dimmer and opportunities were even scarcer. In the outskirts of Nova Haven, the planet's sole remaining settlement, Tarek Ryden tinkered with a broken atmospheric filter, calloused hands working methodically as he had for the 15 years since his dishonorable discharge. "Come on, you stubborn piece of junk," he muttered, adjusting his protective goggles. The workshop around him was cluttered with salvaged parts, proof of his talent for breathing life into discarded technology. It wasn't glamorous work, but it kept him fed and, more importantly, forgotten. The filter sputtered to life, its indicators glowing a faint blue. Tarek allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction as he set his tools down. His moment of peace was interrupted by the harsh beeping of his communication terminal. Few people contacted him these days, and fewer still brought good news. The holographic display flickered to reveal the weathered face of Willem, one of the local salvage scouts. "Found something weird in the northern ruins," Willem said without preamble. "Some kind of containment unit. Military grade, but older than anything I've seen before." Tarek frowned. "And why bring this to me instead of the official channels?" Willem's laugh was dry. "Because it's got those weird markings. Like the ones on your old equipment. The stuff you never talk about." Tarek felt a knot form in his stomach. The northern ruins were all that remained of the Commonwealth's research facility, the same facility where he'd once served as head of security before everything went wrong. Before the experiments. Before the cover-up that cost him his career and nearly his life. "Send me the coordinates," he said finally. The journey to the northern ruins took nearly 3 hours, his aging hover transport struggling against Viridia's fierce winds. The landscape grew increasingly barren as he approached the facility, vegetation giving way to twisted metal and crumbling concrete, scars of the disaster that had occurred 8 years prior. Following Willem's coordinates led him deep into the Central Research Wing, an area that had been heavily restricted even when Tarek had worked there. The air grew colder as he descended, his flashlight casting long shadows across walls marked with scorch patterns and strange crystalline growths. And then he found it, a cylindrical containment unit half buried under fallen debris. Unlike the ruins around it, the unit appeared largely intact, its surface covered in iridescent markings that seemed to pulse faintly in the beam of his flashlight. Tarek recognized the symbols immediately: quantum stabilization warnings, biohazard notices, and something else, glyphs from the ancient dragon ruins discovered beneath Viridia's surface decades ago. "What in the seven hells were you working on down here?" he whispered, setting down his pack to examine the unit more closely. The containment field was active but failing, its energy signature fluctuating wildly. Whatever was inside wouldn't remain contained for much longer. Common sense told him to back away, to call in the authorities despite his distrust of them. But curiosity, and something else, something like recognition, kept him rooted in place. With practiced movements, Tarek bypassed the security systems, his old access code surprisingly still functional. The containment unit hissed open, releasing a cloud of cryogenic vapor that momentarily obscured his vision. When the mist cleared, Tarek found himself staring at a creature unlike anything he had seen before. It resembled a dragon from old Earth legends, but smaller, about the size of a large dog, with scales that shifted between midnight blue and burnished copper. Its wings were folded tightly against its body, tipped with what appeared to be crystalline structures. Most striking, however, were the mechanical components integrated seamlessly into its form, a neural interface along its spine, reinforced joints, and a pulsing core visible beneath translucent scales on its chest. The creature was a hybrid, part biological dragon, part advanced technology. And it was injured, its breathing shallow, one wing bent at an unnatural angle. Its eyes fluttered open, revealing intelligent pupils that contracted in the sudden light. They were the color of molten gold, and they fixed on Tarek with unmistakable awareness. "Easy," Tarek said softly, surprising himself. "I'm not going to hurt you." The dragon hybrid made a sound, not a growl, but something more electronic, like data being processed. It tried to stand but collapsed, a soft whimper escaping it. Tarek's training urged caution, but something deeper, perhaps the part of him that had once believed in protecting rather than just surviving, moved his hands forward. The creature flinched at first, then relaxed as he gently examined its injuries. "You're one of the quantum fusion experiments," he realized aloud. "Project Draconis. They said all subjects were terminated after the containment breach." The dragon made another sound, this one clearly pained. Tarek made his decision before he fully realized it. He couldn't leave this creature here to die, not when it was clearly sentient, not when it had already survived against impossible odds. "I don't know if you can understand me," he said, carefully wrapping his jacket around the trembling form, "but I'm getting you out of here." As he lifted the surprisingly light creature, an alarm began to sound deep within the facility. Someone else was monitoring the containment unit, which meant Tarek's window for escape was rapidly closing. He secured the dragon against his chest and began moving swiftly toward the exit. "Don't worry," he told his new companion as they emerged into Viridia's harsh daylight. "I've got a workshop where we can fix you up. I'm pretty good with broken things." The dragon's golden eyes met his, and Tarek felt something he hadn't experienced in years: purpose. Whatever this creature was, whoever had created it and for whatever reason, it deserved better than to die alone in a forgotten lab. As he loaded his precious cargo into his transport, Tarek glanced at the horizon where dust clouds were forming, likely military vehicles responding to the alarm. He needed to move quickly. "I think I'll call you Flux," he told the dragon as the transport hummed to life. "Because you're about to change everything." Dawn broke over Viridia's jagged landscape as Tarek's transport skimmed silently across the barren plains. He had disabled the vehicle's transponder and rerouted power to the stealth systems, modifications from his military days that he'd never thought he'd need again. Beside him, Flux lay curled in a makeshift nest of blankets, occasionally lifting his head to observe the changing terrain through the viewport. "We're heading to the western ridges," Tarek explained, knowing somehow that the dragon understood him. "There's a settlement there that doesn't officially exist. People who, like me, had too many questions about what was happening on this planet." The western ridges were considered uninhabitable, massive rock formations carved by Viridia's caustic winds, riddled with deep crevasses and electromagnetic disturbances that rendered most navigation systems useless. The perfect place to hide if you knew the way. As they approached the ridgeline, Tarek slowed the transport and reached beneath the control panel, extracting a small device. When activated, it emitted a pulsing signal on a frequency known only to a select few. Minutes passed in silence. Then, almost imperceptibly, lights flickered in a specific pattern among the rocks ahead, a response to his signal. "That's our welcome," Tarek said, relief evident in his voice. "They're still here." He guided the transport toward what appeared to be a solid rock face, but as they drew closer, a hidden entrance revealed itself, a masterwork of holographic camouflage and engineering. The passage beyond was narrow, barely accommodating the transport's width, and descended steeply into the heart of the ridge. Flux chirped questioningly, his golden eyes reflecting the bioluminescent lichen that lined the tunnel walls. "Home sweet home," Tarek murmured as they emerged into a vast cavern. "Or at least, the closest thing to it that exists on this forsaken planet." The underground settlement was a marvel of adaptive architecture. Dwellings had been carved directly into the stone walls, connected by suspended walkways and illuminated by a combination of natural light channeled through crystal shafts and artificial systems. Hydroponic gardens cascaded down terraced levels, providing both food and oxygen. As they docked at one of the lower platforms, a woman approached, tall and lean, with close-cropped silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Director Lyra Voss had once been the Commonwealth's foremost xenobiologist before her public opposition to military exploitation of Viridia's resources had ended her career. "Tarek Ryden," she said, her tone carefully neutral. "It's been 3 years." "It's good to see you too, Director," Tarek replied, climbing from the transport. "I need your help." Lyra's gaze shifted to the passenger compartment, where Flux was now fully alert, regarding her with evident curiosity. Her eyes widened in scientific fascination rather than fear. "Is that one of the Draconis subjects?" she whispered, stepping closer. "They said all test subjects were terminated after the accident." "Apparently not all of them," Tarek said grimly. "Can we talk somewhere private? General Mercer's forces are already searching for us." Lyra nodded briskly. "Bring your friend to my laboratory. Quickly." The laboratory was a spacious chamber equipped with a surprising array of advanced technology, evidence that the settlement had connections beyond Viridia. Tarek carefully transferred Flux to an examination table as Lyra sealed the door behind them. "He's injured," Tarek explained, "but he's stable. I did what I could with limited resources." Lyra activated her scanning equipment, taking care to move slowly and explain her actions as she worked. "Remarkable," she breathed as data began to populate her screens. "The integration of biological and mechanical components is far beyond anything in the public research papers." "He can manipulate energy fields," Tarek added. "And he's intelligent, fully sentient. He tried to communicate with me." Flux watched the proceedings with alert interest, occasionally turning his head to examine the holographic displays of his own internal structure. When Lyra extended a hand tentatively, he sniffed it before allowing her to touch his scales. "The quantum core is unlike anything I've seen," Lyra murmured. "It's not just implanted, it's grown, integrated at the cellular level. And these crystalline structures." She gestured toward Flux's wing tips. "They're natural conductors for the energy he manipulates." "Fascinating." A soft alert sounded from one of her monitors. Lyra frowned, moving to examine the readout. "What is it?" Tarek asked, tensing. "His genetic structure, it's not entirely artificial." Lyra enlarged the display, pointing to specific sequences. These markers match samples we recovered from the ancient ruins in the deep caves. The dragon DNA they used wasn't just from fossils. It was viable genetic material. Tarek's brow furrowed. What are you saying? I'm saying that Project Draconis wasn't just creating hybrids, Lyra replied. They were attempting to recreate something that once existed naturally on this planet. The ancient dragons of Viridia weren't myths, they were an indigenous species. And if I'm reading this correctly, they were engineered guardians. Flux chirped suddenly, hopping off the examination table despite his injuries. He moved with purpose toward a sealed container at the far end of the laboratory, his mechanical components pulsing with increasing intensity. What's in there? Tarek asked, following cautiously. Artifacts from the deep caves, Lyra explained. Including a partial neural record we've never been able to decode. Flux placed his front claws on the container, and the crystals on his wings began to glow. Energy arced between them and the container's security system, which unlocked with a soft hiss. Inside lay a crystalline orb, similar in composition to Flux's wing tips but larger and more complex. When Flux touched the orb, it responded immediately, illuminating with the same blue light that emanated from his core. The laboratory's lights flickered as energy surged through the settlement systems. He's connecting to it, Lyra whispered in awe. A three-dimensional projection suddenly filled the room, ancient glyphs and symbols that resembled those Tarek had seen on the containment unit, but far more extensive. They shifted and flowed, eventually resolving into recognizable images, dragons much larger than Flux, with the same crystalline structures, soaring above what Tarek recognized as Viridia, but a different Viridia, verdant and alive. The planet's original guardians, Lyra breathed. They were part of a planetary defense system. The crystals throughout the caves, they're not just formations. They're components of a network that spans the entire planet. Flux released the orb, turning to face them. The mechanical components along his spine glowed brightly, and for the first time, he produced a sound that was unmistakably speech, halting and distorted, but clearly an attempt at their language. Protect, he managed, the effort visibly draining him. Home. Tarek and Lyra exchanged stunned glances as Flux continued. Others, coming. Before either could respond, the settlement's alarm system activated, a low, pulsing tone that echoed through the cavern. Lyra rushed to her communication terminal. Perimeter breach, she announced grimly. Multiple military transports approaching from the east. They found us. Tarek's jaw tightened. Mercer. How? Lyra demanded. These coordinates aren't in any Commonwealth database. Flux chirped sadly, extending one wing to reveal a small, blinking device embedded near the joint, a tracker, so seamlessly integrated with his mechanical components that Tarek had missed it during his repairs. They followed us here, Tarek realized. We led them straight to your sanctuary. Outside the laboratory, the sounds of urgent activity grew as the settlement prepared for unwelcome visitors. Tarek met Flux's golden eyes, seeing not fear but determination in their depths. What do we do now? He asked, the question directed at both his companions. Flux turned back toward the crystalline orb, which continued to pulse with ancient energy. The message was clear, whatever came next would be determined by the connection between Viridia's past and its uncertain future.